When you've spent months hunting for a gaming laptop, you've probably already learned the hard way that the cheapest gaming-ready machines often turn into a disappointment after the first few hours of play. I've seen friends buy a budget-priced model, only to be hit with thermal throttling, choppy frame rates, and a keyboard that stops lighting up after a week. It makes the whole excitement feel like a regret, and it forces you to wonder, is there a middle ground where you get performance without the nightmare of a subpar device? That's where the MSI Katana 15HX lands on my radar. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The first thing I did was look past the headline specs: RTX 5070, 14th Gen i7, 165Hz QHD, and ask the practical questions most buyers have. How hot does it get under a 30-minute raid in Destiny 2? Can I stream a 1080p YouTube video while the game runs at high settings? Does the SSD really feel instantaneous, or is it another bottleneck hidden behind a glossy marketing sheet? Those are the moments that separate a hype machine from a laptop you can actually live with day to day. If you're a competitive gamer who lives for reflex-based shooters, the Katana's 165Hz QHD panel is a clear win. The 2560x1440 resolution gives you a crisp picture, and the high refresh rate means smoother motion when you're tracking enemies at the edge of the screen. In my own testing with Valorant, the frame rate stayed comfortably above 120 frames per second on medium-high settings, so the display never became the limiting factor. That said, if you're someone who mainly plays single-player RPGs or narrative adventures, you might not notice the difference between 120Hz and 144Hz as much, and the extra price for that panel could be better allocated elsewhere. Performance-wise, the laptop truly shines because of the RTX 5070 GPU combined with the 14th Gen i7 14650HX. In a recent session of Cyberpunk 2077 at 1080p with ray tracing on, the system maintained a steady 55 frames per second, which is impressive for a 15-inch chassis. The 8GB of GDDR7 memory on the GPU gives it enough bandwidth for modern titles, and the 16GB DDR5 RAM ensures the CPU isn't a bottleneck when you have multiple applications open. This is especially handy if you're also doing video editing or streaming. I ran OBS alongside an open World of Warcraft instance, and the laptop handled both without dropping the game's frame rate below 60 frames per second. One common concern with high-performance laptops is the cooling solution. MSI markets a professional cooling system, and in practice it feels legit. The dual-fan setup with multiple heat pipes keeps the CPU temperature in the low 80°C under load, which is warm but not catastrophic. What matters is the acoustic side. The fans become audible around 70% load, but they don't scream like a dying radiator. If you're playing in a shared apartment or a quiet bedroom, you might want to keep the fan curve a bit lower and accept a small dip in performance during long sessions. On the bright side, the laptop's chassis has vent placements that help hot air escape, and after a marathon gaming night, the device cooled down to normal room temperature within a few minutes. Storage and speed are another area where the Katana delivers. The 1TB NVMe SSD feels as fast as a desktop SSD. Games install in minutes, and Windows boots in under 15 seconds. I've also tried copying a 30GB folder of raw video footage, and the transfer rates hovered around 2.5 GB per second, which is more than enough for most creators. The only downside is that the drive is a single slot, so you can't add a second SSD without removing the existing one. If you think you'll need more than a terabyte in the future, you'll have to rely on an external USB-C SSD, which is a minor inconvenience for a laptop of this class. The keyboard gets a lot of attention because it's RGB backlit, but the true test is how it feels after long typing sessions. MSI uses a shallow key travel with a slight tactile bump, which is comfortable for gaming but may not satisfy a writer who prefers deeper keystrokes. However, the lighting zones are customizable through the Dragon Center software, and you can set different colors per zone for an immersive feel. In non-gaming scenarios like coding or drafting emails, the keyboard is still responsive enough without the constant need for bright colors. Battery life is often the Achilles heel for gaming laptops, and the Katana is no exception. With a 99 Wh battery, you'll get about 4 hours of mixed usage, some streaming, some light gaming, a bit of browsing. If you try to push a demanding title like Elden Ring at high settings, the battery drops to roughly 2 hours. So, you'll definitely want to stay near a power outlet for serious sessions. That said, the charging speed is decent. A 20-minute charge gets you close to 30% battery, which can be a lifesaver if you need to head out quickly. Who should buy this laptop? If you are a mid-range gamer who wants to play current AAA titles at high settings, do occasional streaming, and value